London, 1888. A city gripped by fear. A faceless killer lurks in the shadows, striking without warning, leaving behind a trail of mutilated bodies. His victims, 5 women, brutally butchered. His methods, precise, calculated, as if he were performing surgery in the dead of night. He taunted the police, he played with their minds, and then he vanished. Who was he? A doctor? A nobleman? A madman? Over a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. Some say he disappeared, but others believe he never truly left. London, 1888. The fog rolled in thick over Whitechapel's labyrinthine streets, suffocating the dim glow of gas lamps and muffling the distant echoes of hooves against cobblestone. It was the kind of night where the city itself felt alive, watching, waiting. Inspector Frederick Aberline pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders, his sharp eyes scanning the dark alleys of Bucks Row. The recent murder of Marianne Polly Nichols had shaken the already uneasy district. He had seen his fair share of gruesome crime scenes, but nothing like this. The killer hadn't just taken a life, he had made a statement. As he approached the crime scene, the stench of blood thickened in the air. A small crowd had gathered, whispering amongst themselves, eyes darting between the lifeless bodies sprawled in the gutter and the uniformed officers keeping them at bay. Polly Nichols lay on her back, her dress lifted just above her knees, her throat savagely slit. Blood pooled beneath her head, a grotesque halo of crimson. But what disturbed Aberline most was the deep, precise incisions across her abdomen. Whoever had done this wasn't in a blind rage, there was a method to their madness. "Another one," muttered Sergeant William Thick, stepping beside him. "That's 2 now. Martha Tabram last month, now her. The city's losing its mind, sir." Aberline didn't reply immediately. Instead, he knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the wounds. "This isn't just some drunk with a knife," he finally said. "This is something else, something planned." A journalist from the Star, Thomas Baxter, loomed nearby, scribbling feverishly in his notebook. "Inspector, is it true there's a killer targeting women? People are saying there's a pattern." "People say a lot of things," Aberline cut in. He wasn't ready to admit it, but a chilling suspicion crept through his mind. This might be only the beginning. As the body was carefully lifted onto a cart, an eerie silence settled over the street. Somewhere in the distance, the clock tower chimed 3 times, and in the shadows of a nearby alley, a figure stood watching, his breath slow and steady. The Ripper had begun his work. The morning after Polly Nichols' murder, Inspector Aberline sat at his desk in Scotland Yard, staring at the reports piling up before him. His mind was a fog of unanswered questions. Why this woman? Why the gruesome mutilations? Was this just the work of a madman? Or was there a purpose behind the brutality? A knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. Sergeant William Thick stepped inside, his expression grim. "Sir, we've received this at the station." He placed a crumpled envelope on the desk. Aberline eyed the envelope carefully. The writing was jagged, hurried, almost theatrical. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. The words, written in deep red ink, chilled him to the core. "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." Aberline read the words twice. His grip tightened on the letter as he exhaled slowly. "Jack the Ripper. The bastard's mocking us," Thick growled. Aberline leaned back, his mind racing. The reference to Leather Apron stood out. Many in Whitechapel believed a man called John Pizer, a local bootmaker known to carry a knife, was responsible for the recent murders. But this letter suggested otherwise. "Send a copy to the press," Aberline said at last. "If he wants a name, we'll give it to him. But we make it clear this city won't be played with." Thick hesitated. "Sir, if we publish this, it could cause panic." "There's already panic," Aberline countered. Let's see if this Ripper enjoys the spotlight as much as he enjoys killing. That evening, Whitechapel was alive with fear. The letter had spread like wildfire through the papers, and whispers of Jack the Ripper filled the air. The taverns brimmed with speculation. Catherine Eddowes, a woman known for her quick wit and sharp tongue, sipped a pint in the 10 Bells pub, shaking her head as she listened to the frightened conversations around her. All this talk about the Ripper, she muttered. He's just another bogeyman. Her friend, Annie Chapman, clutched her shawl tighter. Then why do I feel like he's watching us? Unbeknownst to them, outside in the thick London fog he was. In a narrow alley near Hanbury Street, a shadow moved. A figure stepped forward, his hat low, his coat brushing the cobblestones. The city may have been in fear, but to him, it was merely a game that had only just begun. By morning, the news of Annie Chapman's murder had spread like wildfire. The Star published an article that sent shivers through London's spine. The Ripper strikes again. Another woman butchered in Whitechapel. Who will be next? Panic turned to hysteria. Women refused to walk the streets alone. Butchers, doctors, and barbers were eyed with suspicion. The police received hundreds of false confessions, each more bizarre than the last. And then, just as the city trembled in fear, another letter arrived. This one was different. Unlike the first, this letter wasn't addressed to the police or the press. It was sent directly to Scotland Yard, and this time there was no mocking tone, no riddles, just 5 words. Catch me if you can. Aberline clenched his jaw as he read the note. His mind was made up. It's time, he muttered. We bring in our suspects. As he spoke, the shadow of a figure moved outside the station, a pair of cold eyes watching from the darkness. The Ripper was playing his game, and he was far from finished. The gas lamps flickered dimly as Inspector Frederick Aberline paced inside Scotland Yard, the latest letter still clutched in his hands. Catch me if you can. The words taunted him. The Ripper was playing a game, a twisted, nightmarish game where the rules were his own. But Aberline wasn't about to let him win. That evening, a meeting was called. Scotland Yard's best minds sat around the long wooden table, faces grim. I want every possible suspect on a list, Aberline ordered. Anyone with knowledge of anatomy, anyone seen loitering near the crime scenes, any reports of men behaving suspiciously. Sergeant William Thick nodded, flipping through a file. We've already got a few names circulating, some from street rumors, others from witness reports. Aberline leaned in. Let's hear them. Thick adjusted his spectacles and began. The suspects: John Pizer, leather apron, a local bootmaker with a history of violence against women. He carried a sharp knife and had been seen lurking near Whitechapel's alleys. Montague John Druitt, a barrister with a fascination for anatomy, a man of means, yet deeply troubled. Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American doctor known for his eccentric behavior and collection of female body parts. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber with a history of mental instability. Some claimed he harbored a deep hatred for women. James Maybrick, a cotton merchant with a dark obsession. Diaries found years later would hint at a chilling confession. Aberline exhaled, rubbing his temples. None of them fit perfectly, but we can't ignore any lead. Bring them in, one by one. As the police rounded up suspects for questioning, the people of Whitechapel were spiraling into paranoia. The pubs were filled with whispers and accusations, neighbors eyeing each other with suspicion. At the 10 Bells pub, the tension was palpable. Catherine Eddowes, a sharp-tongued woman with fiery eyes, slammed her drink onto the table. This whole city's gone mad, she spat. Every man I pass on the street, I wonder could it be him? Her friend, Elizabeth Stride, shivered. Maybe we should stop going out at night, Catherine scoffed. And let some ghost story keep us locked away? Not a chance. Whoever he is, he won't scare me. But as the clock struck midnight, a figure watched from the shadows outside the pub. His work was far from finished. At Scotland Yard, John Pizer sat under the flickering oil lamp, his thick hands clenched. I had nothing to do with those killings, he snarled. I've been accused because I carry a knife, but that don't make me a murderer. Aberline studied him carefully. Pizer was violent, yes, a brute with a bad reputation. But was he the Ripper? The questioning continued. Each suspect had their own secrets, their own darkness, but none had the precise, calculated cruelty of the killer they were hunting. The real Jack the Ripper was still out there, and he was waiting. Just as Aberline was about to leave the station that night, another message arrived. But this time, it wasn't a letter. It was a blood-stained handkerchief, wrapped around a small scrap of human flesh. A note was attached. You are close, but not close enough. Aberline's stomach twisted. His worst fear had come true. Jack the Ripper had chosen his next victim, and by the time they found her, it would already be too late. Whitechapel, the 30th of September, 1888. The air was thick, with fog, rolling in from the docks like a ghostly tide. The streets of Whitechapel, already steeped in fear, seemed even darker that night. The Ripper had grown bolder, taunting the police, slipping through their grasp. But what no one knew, what no one could know, was that tonight, he would strike twice. Elizabeth Stride hurried through the dimly lit alleyway off Burner Street, clutching her shawl against the cold. The sounds of a pub's drunken revelry echoed in the distance, but here, in the quiet darkness, she was alone, or so she thought. A shadow moved behind her. She turned sharply, her heart hammering. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, before she could scream, a gloved hand clamped over her mouth. A swift, merciless slash of the knife cut deep into her throat. The Ripper's work had begun. Footsteps approached. The figure melted into the shadows just as Louis Dimschutz, a cart driver, turned into the alleyway. His horse shied violently, refusing to move forward. And then he saw her. Elizabeth Stride lay slumped against the wall, her throat cut. But something was different. There were no mutilations. The killer had been interrupted. Less than an hour later, while the police swarmed Burner Street, the Ripper was already hunting again. Catherine Eddowes staggered out of the police station, having been held overnight for drunkenness. She was sober now, but as she walked through Mitre Square, she had no idea she was being followed. The killer was furious. His first attack had been incomplete, his work left unfinished. Catherine Eddowes would pay the price. She barely had time to register the danger before the blade sliced across her throat, severing the arteries. She collapsed, the cold pavement soaking up her lifeblood. But this time, the Ripper didn't stop. He took his time. By the time she was discovered, her face had been savagely disfigured, her abdomen ripped open, and her organs removed with surgical precision. A piece of her kidney was missing, and nearby, scrawled in chalk on a wall, a cryptic message. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. The police, fearing riots, quickly erased the message. But the Ripper's real message had already been delivered. He had killed twice in one night, and London was now his playground. The newspapers dubbed it the double event. 2 murders, 1 night. The city reeled in terror. Women refused to leave their homes. Men clutched their coats tighter, eyes darting to every shadow. Aberline stood over Catherine Eddowes' body, his jaw clenched. The brutality of this murder was even worse than the others. The precision, the confidence. The Ripper was getting bolder. Sergeant Thick approached. "Sir, the missing kidney. What do you make of it?" Aberline exhaled slowly. "I think the Ripper wanted us to know he could take whatever he would, and we were powerless to stop him." He turned to the other officers. "We need to find that kidney. If we do, we find him." 3 days later, another letter arrived at Scotland Yard. This one was different. It contained half of a human kidney. The note, written in the same red ink as before, read, "I send you half the kidney I took from one woman. I fried and ate the other piece. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you only wait a little longer. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." Aberline dropped the letter on his desk. A cold chill ran down his spine. The Ripper was no longer just killing. He was playing with them. And worse, he was winning. October 1888. Whitechapel, London. The streets of Whitechapel were no longer just dangerous, they were haunted. The shadow of Jack the Ripper loomed over every alleyway, every darkened doorway. The people of London no longer asked if he would strike again, but when. Inside Scotland Yard, Inspector Frederick Aberline sat at his desk, staring at the gruesome half-kidney that had arrived with the latest letter. The sickening stench of decay still clung to the preserved organ, a twisted calling card from the most infamous killer in London's history. The room was filled with men officers, detectives, even members of Parliament, each wearing the same haunted expression. "We cannot let this go on," growled Commissioner Charles Warren, slamming his fist on the table. "The Queen herself is demanding action. We need a name." Aberline nodded. "We have suspects, but nothing conclusive. The Ripper isn't just a madman, he's intelligent, precise, and..." He hesitated. "He's enjoying this." Silence. Then, Sergeant William Thick spoke. "Sir, what about the gangs? The Jews, the Freemasons? The papers are filled with theories." Aberline sighed. He had heard every wild accusation, the idea that the Freemasons were involved in a ritualistic killing, that a member of the royal family had gone insane, even that a woman could be the murderer. But none of it felt right. Then a voice spoke from the corner of the room. "What if it's someone untouchable?" All eyes turned to Sir Robert Anderson, head of Scotland Yard's Criminal Investigation Department. "What if," Anderson continued, lowering his voice, "this isn't just some lunatic, but someone with wealth, status, someone protected?" A chill ran through the room. That night, Aberline and Thick met privately in a candle-lit office, away from prying ears. "I want surveillance," Aberline said firmly. "We watch every doctor, every butcher, every nobleman with an interest in anatomy." Thick hesitated. "That means watching our own kind." Aberline leaned in. "If the Ripper is hiding behind power, then we need to be smarter than him." The search widened. The police began investigating the wealthy elite, peering into the underground medical world. And that's when a name resurfaced. Montague John Druitt, a well-educated barrister from a wealthy family. Brilliant, but troubled. A man who had once studied medicine and had recently been dismissed from his job under mysterious circumstances. But before they could bring him in, something happened. Druitt disappeared, and the Ripper remained one step ahead. As Scotland Yard scrambled to catch the killer, Whitechapel remained in terror's grip. The pubs no longer bustled late into the night. The streets emptied before dark. And yet, there were always whisper sightings of a man in a long coat, lurking in the alleys, watching from the fog. Some claimed to hear footsteps behind them, only to turn and find nothing. Some claimed to see a glint of a knife before darkness swallowed them whole. And some never lived long enough to tell the tale. Jack the Ripper was more than a murderer now. He was a ghost. Then, on a cold October night, another letter arrived. This one was different. It was addressed directly to Aberline. "Dear Inspector, you are so very close, and yet so very far. The streets are empty now, but I still walk among them. Do you feel my breath on your neck? Do you hear my laughter in the wind? I will write my name in blood once more, and when I do, you will know me. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." Aberline's grip tightened on the paper. He knew what this meant. The Ripper wasn't finished. He was coming back, and the next murder would be the worst yet. The 9th of November, 1888, Whitechapel, London. The gas lamps flickered weakly against the early morning fog, their dim glow swallowed by the damp London air. The streets were quieter than ever. Few dared to venture out after dark, not with Jack the Ripper still at large. But inside a small, dingy room at 13 Miller's Court, a woman laughed softly, her voice warm with the effects of gin. Mary Jane Kelly, a young Irish woman with fiery hair and a rebellious spirit, reclined on her small, rickety bed. The night was cold, but she had company, a shadowed figure who had paid for her time. She poured another drink, smiling lazily. "You're a quiet one," she murmured, tilting her head at her guest. "A gentleman, then?" The figure said nothing. The candle on the bedside table flickered violently. "A draft? No, something else." Mary frowned. suddenly uneasy. The man's posture was still, too still. His breath slow and controlled. And then she saw it. The glint of a knife. The last thing Mary Jane Kelly saw before the darkness took her was the slow, methodical smile of her killer. And then the blade descended. The next morning, the 9th of November, the landlord of 13 Miller's Court, Thomas Bowyer, approached Mary's room to collect overdue rent. He knocked once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. Sighing in frustration, he moved to the window and pulled aside the torn curtain. What he saw sent him staggering back in horror. Inside, Mary Jane Kelly lay sprawled on the blood-soaked bed, her body butchered beyond recognition. Her face had been peeled away, leaving a gaping, empty void where her features once were. Her body had been flayed open, her internal organs strewn about the room, some neatly placed beside her, others missing entirely. The bed, the walls, the very air dripped with blood. The Ripper had outdone himself. When Inspector Aberline arrived, he had seen death before. He had seen murder. But this was something else. The sheer level of rage, the methodical desecration of the body, it was more than just killing. It was a statement. Aberline swallowed hard, stepping closer. The stench of iron and decay thickened in his nostrils. His gaze traveled across the room, trying to piece together the mind behind the madness. And then he saw it. Carved into the wall, etched with something knife, a fingernail, was a single word. Finished. Aberline's blood ran cold. Jack the Ripper was gone. He, murder of Mary Jane Kelly, sent London into absolute hysteria. It was by far the worst of the Ripper's crimes, a level of brutality unseen before. But then nothing. No more bodies, no more letters, no more signs of Jack the Ripper. It was as if he had vanished into the fog, leaving behind only ghosts and questions that would never be answered. The case remained open for months, years, decades. Theories flourished. Some claimed he had fled to America. Others believed he had died, taking his secrets to the grave. Some whispered that the police had discovered his identity but covered it up, that the Ripper had been a man of power, someone untouchable. But the truth? The truth was never found. Now, over a century later, the name Jack the Ripper still echoes through history. The case remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. Who was he? A doctor? A nobleman? A butcher? A madman? No one knows. But in the fog-drenched streets of Whitechapel, some say his spirit still lingers, a shadow in the alleyways, a whisper in the wind. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you listen carefully, on a cold London night, you can still hear the sound of footsteps. Footsteps that never really stopped,